Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Warzone. Today we have a deeply significant and urgent story to explore. Breaking news: Belarus Uprising 2025, Lukashenko's regime under fire. In this video, we'll walk through the exterior reality unfolding in Belarus, glance at the internal dynamics of the regime and opposition, assess the performance of the uprising so far, talk about the risks and security safety issues, highlight what makes this moment unique, estimate costs in human terms, and wrap up with what it all might mean going forward. The exterior landscape of Belarus in 2025 is one of tension, volatility, and growing defiance. Streets in Minsk, Brest, Gomel, Vitebsk, and other cities have seen protest marches, sporadic clashes, and heavy security presence. Barricades, police cordons, armored vehicles, and riot units are deployed. The state media frames the unrest as external interference and terrorist provocations, attempting to delegitimize protesters. Meanwhile, opposition channels, independent media in exile, and social networks are broadcasting images of crowds chanting, activists being arrested, and graffiti with slogans demanding freedom. International pressure is mounting. The European Parliament has rejected the legitimacy of Belarus's 2025 presidential election. The regime is also under scrutiny from OSCE, human rights groups, and Western governments demanding release of political prisoners. In parallel, Belarus is hosting the Zapad 2025 joint military exercise with Russia, positioning troops and messaging strength. The exterior is a clash of symbols: state power, flexing its muscles, people resisting, and global eyes watching. Inside, within the regime and opposition, things are more fluid and complex. The regime remains centralized around Alexander Lukashenko, who has ruled since 1994. In January 2025, the regime announced a landslide victory for him, with reported results near 87% support, a result widely denounced as a sham by opposition groups and Western leaders. Independent media, opposition parties, and civil society have been suppressed for years. Thousands have been arrested since 2020 under charges of extremism, treason, or terrorism. At any given time, over 1,000 political detainees remain in prisons. The regime also uses forced deportation of released prisoners, sometimes without identity documents, to neutralize their political influence. On the other side, opposition forces, led in exile by Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya and others, are coordinating protests, leveraging diasporas, applying diplomatic pressure, and resisting regime narratives. The Belarusian partisan movement, emerging since 2020, continues clandestine operations, sabotage, and symbolic resistance. Former prisoners who have been released speak of a system that trades human life for political leverage. As some are freed, new ones get arrested. Inside the regime itself, cracks may be forming. Some security or military actors may be uncomfortable with heavy-handed repression, though open mutiny remains unlikely under strict control. Performance, meaning how effective the uprising is so far. The movement has shown remarkable resilience. Despite brutal crackdowns, mass arrests, censorship, and surveillance, protests continue. The international community is partially responsive, some sanctions are threatened, some releases of prisoners occur, and diplomacy shifts. But performance is uneven. In many places, the regime retains control of security forces, communications, and infrastructure. The protest movement is fragmented, under-resourced, and at risk of co-optation or repression. The regime's security apparatus is ruthless, and it often outmatches protest groups in firepower, intelligence, and resources. Moreover, the regime's ability to cut online access, control media, and isolate communities gives it a formidable defensive advantage. Some protests remain symbolic rather than physically transformative. The success of the uprising will depend on coordination, whether defections in the security forces emerge, whether the regime loses legitimacy mass scale, and whether international actors ramp up support. When we turn to safety and risks, the picture is dire. Protesters risk arrest, torture, detention, disappearance, or even death. Many have already faced abuse, medical neglect, and harsh prison conditions. The regime often labels dissent as extremism or terrorism, broadening legal grounds for heavy penalties. Opposition activists abroad may face transnational repression, surveillance, coerced deportation, or intimidation of family left behind. Digital security is precarious. Internet shutdowns, surveillance, censorship, and infiltration are tactics used by the state. Communications risk being intercepted and networks disrupted. The regime also holds a bargaining chip. By using political prisoners as hostages, it can negotiate their release on regime-friendly terms. Across all fronts, the human cost is severe, and the safety margin for resistance is razor-thin. Now, what are the unique selling points, meaning what makes this uprising moment exceptional? First, timing. This is not the first wave of Belarusian resistance, but it arguably carries more urgency. Due to regional conflict, the war in Ukraine, pressure on Russia, and shifting geopolitical alignments. Belarus is a strategic buffer state. The world cannot ignore it. Second, the regime's facade is increasingly exposed. The 2025 election was broadly denounced as illegitimate. Third, the diaspora and digital opposition network are more robust and interconnected than ever, enabling cross-border coordination. Fourth, there is a symbolic resonance. This is, for many Belarusians, a fight to reclaim national identity, language, cultural autonomy, and liberation from decades of suppression and Russification policies. Fifth, the potential for cracks within the security forces or regime elites, if they emerge, could shift the balance. Sixth, global attention is higher. With Belarus more tied to Russia's war in Ukraine, the stakes are international. And finally, the regime's own concessions, like releasing some prisoners, reveal both vulnerability and leverage, making each move politically loaded. In terms of price, we must speak in the currency of human lives, suffering, and social disruption. This is not about dollars but costs. Thousands of people have been arrested, many tortured, some have died or continued in grueling conditions. Entire families face persecution, exile, or economic deprivation. Infrastructure in protest zones is damaged, supply chains disrupted, communities intimidated. The economic cost is also high. Sanctions, isolation, capital flight, disruption to trade, pressure from Russia, and the burden of security spending all strain the national budget. The political cost is even deeper. For the regime, legitimacy is eroding. For the opposition, failure would mean mass imprisonment or worse. For Belarus as a whole, the price is the fragility of order, the threat of escalation into violent conflict, and the possibility of external intervention or fragmentation. In conclusion, the 2025 Belarus Uprising is a high-stakes, protracted confrontation between an entrenched autocratic regime and a populace craving democratic change, dignity, and freedom. The exterior is one of confrontation, the interior of resilience and risk, the performance mixed but with potential for escalation, safety steeped in danger, and the unique features deeply symbolic and globally resonant. The human price is already enormous, and it will likely grow as the fight continues. Whether the uprising succeeds, stalls, or is forcibly suppressed depends on a delicate interplay: public cohesion, morale, regime cracks, diplomatic leverage, and international pressure. For the people of Belarus, this is a moment of existential choice: stay silenced or fight. For the world, it's a test. Will it act to defend dignity or look away? Let me know if you want a more detailed version focusing on one city, or visuals to accompany the narration, or a shorter version.